ladies and gentlemen, I am your friend Mark Bland, as always, and I'm sitting here talking with Dylan Hernandez from the Los Angeles Times, a reporter that is, well, let's just say this, Dylan. You're not very popular in the city of St. Louis, specifically right now in America. Like I'm just putting that out there. But thank you for taking time out of your busy day to talk to us.
No, thank you. And I'm actually kind of used to it. I'm not very popular in Los Angeles either. So,
well, that's fair. No. Well, listen, when I read your article, I'm kind of a pariah for the market of St. Louis. Okay, they're not a real big fan of my style of politics when I do the Q. But at the same point, like I'm not a hot take master by any means. Can I do hot takes really well? Sure, I can. And do I deal with a lot of it because politics naturally divisive, a lot of hot takes in that world? Sure, yes, I can roll with all those punches. But I'm also kind of in the mindset of an open-minded individual when I look at things too. And I know that sometimes I get attacked and I get put down because when you read something in a text-based format, such as an article from the Los Angeles Times or like a text message or anything like that, even social media, right? Twitter, TikTok, all that's, well, not TikTok so much, but Twitter and anything where you write, like Facebook and all that. Tone and inflection gets taken out of things. Now, you wrote a pretty direct statement in the fact that St. Louis was a dump of a Midwest city. If I do I have that quote correct? Dump of a Midwest city. Something you didn't say St. Louis directly, but you said dump of a Midwest city. Okay, now
correct.
Hard to like take those words, define them, and not understand exactly what you're trying to say. But I don't think that when you were writing that, you were trying to like bury St. Louis for everything, because I think it was more from the fact that the Los Angeles Rams are now in the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers. They're in a market that they haven't been in for many, many years. And as a guy like yourself, like one of the guys who's a host on the Q, his name is Gary Weed. Gary used to be on K-Rock in LA. So he's from LA. He grew up there. Huge Rams fan. And when he moved to St. Louis and they were already here, that's even better. And they're winning Super Bowls. That's even better. But now it's been many years. The Rams have left St. Louis. They've now moved back with a brand new stadium. And what I really want to get to the crux here is first off, let's get this off the board. Are you really truthfully unhappy that St. Louis exists and that it had the Rams at all and it is truly a dump of a city? Or was that more of just lashing out at the moment because you're angry about the way this whole situation sets up, and you know for a fact, being a Rams fan currently in the city where you live at an older age and not having that nostalgia you wrote about in your article, maybe you're a little bit more punching at the wind for that one. That's my question to you. So let's clear that up first.
Okay. So no, I mean, well, the main point again, like you said, right, is that they were gone. I was just really kind of, okay. First of all, I have no personal interest really I'm not a Rams fan. Okay. Contrary to how many, and it's actually funny because just.
And I'm sure a lot of people take that out of context because you wrote about football in such a deep manner. They're like, oh, this guy's obviously a sports guy, or he's a Rams guy, or whatever.
Yeah, so the funny thing is actually just like 3 weeks ago, I think I wrote that this is not a Super Bowl team. I'm guessing if you ask most Rams fans.
I'm a huge professional football fan, even though the Rams aren't here. Like, I'm a Chiefs fan now, but like I follow it, so you're good with
Yeah, so, the thing is like fans always kind of project stuff, right?
Sure.
So Rams fans are like convinced I'm a Raiders fan, which is not also the case.
Of course. You're everything that the other guy wants to point at and go, I hate him. Like
yeah,
that.
So sports writers, we pull for ourselves, right? We want quick games with easy storylines. That's
now. Would you say you're a sports writer, or would you say you're pop
I'm a
culture
sports columnist, right?
You're a sports columnist.
Give,
so are you? What's your sport that's your main focus? Like where do you lay your hat when it comes to sports?
So right now, I mean, honestly, I do everything, right? My job is to, right, as opposed to
you're a devil's advocate for everything.
A regular reporter, I'm a columnist, so my job is to give opinion. Now, I covered the Dodgers for 8 seasons. I was the beat writer there. Okay. So, probably like that's like the thing I'm most familiar with. Personally, actually the sport, my father's from El Salvador. So you could probably guess the sports I really grew up watching were soccer and boxing of all things. Fair. So this is just kind of like
Julio Cesar Chavez in there. I get it.
Yeah. So this is just kind of me pointing out like, hey, like, look, and actually I was kind of surprised, right? When I spoke to people on the secondary ticket market, right? The Rams had actually put in they made it so that when you put in your credit card stuff and to buy tickets on Ticketmaster, if that if your zip code was outside of the LA area, they wouldn't let you buy tickets. Because what happened was in week 18, when the Niners visited, the place was completely overrun with Niners fans. So they put in this kind of safeguard.
Now, would you say you're more of an LA Rams fan or a Niners fan growing up there without LA having a Rams team or a team? Well, actually, they had the Raiders there, but like they kept flip-flopping back and forth.
They actually left it the same year. I was.
Well, yeah.
I mean, honestly,
I'm talking about over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm talking about even back when they were in San Fran and then they moved down and back and all that.
I've actually always kind of more gravitated towards individual athletes. So, like as a kid, I was a Barry Sanders fan.
Okay.
Right. As I got a little bit older, I became, Michael Vick fan.
Are you a LeBron fan? Are we a LeBron guy out there with the Lakers?
I cover this guy now, right? So I'm not. Yeah. My job isn't really, I don't. Again, every now and then there might be a guy that you're kind of pulling for a little bit, like say like Clayton Kershaw, sure. Right? I mean, actually, he had a lot of disasters in St. Louis that I saw firsthand there in the playoffs, and he was a guy who, had a Hall of Fame career.
But it's a great guy that you want to pull for to get that championship. You want him to get that ring because you're like, oh, he deserves it.
Yeah. At the same time, if he hadn't won, it would have been whatever. My day doesn't change based on like what happens with these teams at all.
So now is St. Louis a dump of a city? Like let's get into that real quick.
So again, I cover the Dodgers from 07 through 15, right? Okay. So at that point, it's a National League team. We're visiting at least once a year.
Cardinals.
They met multiple times in the plaffs. So during those times, right, I'm with the team going out there.
Okay. So you've been to St. Louis. You've been to St. Louis. Oh, I think it's a big thing for people to know that.
And on top of that, my brother actually went to medical school there.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, and I went out to like his graduation and stuff. So we, and it's just, look, the area that my brother was living in, for example, wasn't great,
Sure.
So we usually stayed downtown, right? Either at that, I believe it was a courtyard that the train station hotel.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
downtown.
About. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's the other one. I think it might have been a Renaissance.
That's over by the Dome.
Convention Center.
Towards the Dome and Convention Center. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and it just, honestly, like, again, there's certain towns that like when you visit, you're like, okay, there's going to be stuff to do after the game.
Sure.
Places to go eat. It just kind of seemed like there wasn't much there to begin with. And as the years went by, things started closing. There was a place, Route 13. Route 13 was this place.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about? They had this little
Route 13
sushi.
Is, yeah. Mm-hmm. The sushi place. Yeah,
sushi
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Funny story here, and this has nothing to do with anything, but I just want to do this to embarrass him.
No, that's great.
But
I want to hear
Jeff Passan, the baseball writer for ESPN, very good friend of mine, was once we ran into a professional roller derby player or something while we were there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they have a little league. Actually, that's a funny story. I was involved with the redevelopment of that league in St. Louis. I was one of the 3 guys that was a part of it, and I'm the one who stepped away. The other 2 guys went on because roller derby in its earliest incarnations was like pro wrestling, and I had a lot of background in wrestling and understanding how storylines develop and all that. So I was involved with them, and then when I stepped away from the Gatekeepers, which was the rollerblade or the roller derby company or whatever, you probably met some females. Because the female side of that is even more popular than the male side.
Yeah. So this night, it was a drink, and she threw a drink in Jeff's face, hits him with the left hook.
Wow.
Next thing I know, she's literally chasing him around the bar, like they're running.
Was she on roller skates at the time? Okay, good. I'm just saying that would make it like a level level.
Security's like dragging her around, and she's screaming, "I'm gonna kill you! I'm waiting outside!" Blah blah blah.
What the hell?
Yeah, so it's funny.
But that doesn't make us look good. Do you see what I'm saying? We just got random rogue roller derby people running around beating up ESPN writers. Like,
right. And, the funny part to this story was like, so there was another baseball. There were 3 of us there, and she seemed to hate me the least. So I asked the bartender, is there a back exit? So sure. Jeff and the other guy sneak out the back while I went to the front to go calm her down.
Okay.
Jeff made the mistake of texting me later that night asking me, so what happened? And I'm like, well, remember that, there was another kind of random guy that was there drinking with us. And I was like, remember that guy? Well, he told her who you were. And she said that she's going to be waiting for you outside the stadium tomorrow.
Which is weird because, like, why would she care unless they're writing about her?
I made this all up.
Right. Oh, well, okay, obviously.
Yeah,
okay, fair enough. That's fair.
The funny thing is we're walking into the stadium the next day. Jeff is just, like, looking around the entire time.
Oh, he's scared to death. He's scared to death.
During the entire game, he's, like, worried. In the 7th inning, he comes to me and he's like, hey, do you think she's going to be waiting for me?
Oh, my goodness.
And finally, at that point, I just told him, man, I'm just messing with you.
That's so funny. No, I just,
But listen, that place closed.
Right. No. And here's the thing. Like I said, I'm a prior in this market. They don't agree with my politics because I'm a little bit more moderate, a little more liberal with my politics, stuff like that. And that's where I've kind of made my name. And so I understand when the people of this town get angry about a take or a thing or a thought, because they'll come after me just as hard as they came after you. And I'm one of their kids that they grew up here. I grew up in Florissant, born and raised. Like, I am as St. Louis as it gets. But I'm a Flyers fan, right? I'm a huge Cardinals fan. Right? I'm not going to be anybody else. I'm a huge Cardinals fan. But I used to wear a Boston Red Sox cap because my last name's Bland and the B on the Boston Red Sox cap. It just made sense to me to just have the B on my head when I was growing up. It wasn't a knock on the Cardinals or anything like that, but I also understand that this town is a commuter town. And the one thing is that everyone here, like in LA, right? You've got downtown, you've got Anaheim, which, by the way, we should talk about that. If you want to get to the crux of a real problem between, like for a city, let's you and me talk about your town, and not in a negative way. These Anaheim people who refuse to accept that they're just in LA. Okay? They're like, oh no, we're the OC. Oh no, we're in LA. We're not in LA. We're Anaheim. Like, they are so dead set about not being a part of LA, but it's like, all I do is go 5 blocks that way, and it's the border of Anaheim on LA. It's like, you're all LA. No, listen, it could take 2 hours to come from North LA to South LA. Literally, you could take 2 hours to drive that coast. They don't understand that around the rest of the world. Just like most people don't realize in Texas, if you went from one side of Texas to the other, it could take up to 24 hours to drive that. Because Texas is that big. Literally, to go from El Paso all the way down to Brownsville along the border, 24 hours on a road for 24 straight hours, and you never left the state of Texas. We got some huge states, but people don't realize Anaheim is like North County St. Louis is to St. Louis City. Like, it's all St. Louis. So, like, there's no real breakdown. There's no bridge there. And in Anaheim, they're like, oh, we're not LA. And I'm like, no, you are. To everyone in the world, you are all just LA. Hollywood is just LA. All of it is just LA.
Although the traffic just makes it, I mean, that's an hour and a half.
Possibly, it is, right? For sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm not even knocking you.
The 5, that stretch of the 5 is probably like the worst stretch of freeway, I think, in the country. Just in terms of how it's just not suited for, the population that we have here. The traffic is just terrible.
Your weather's too nice. That's the problem. Like, you just got great weather. Like, everybody wants to see the beach and be in great weather. Who wouldn't? Duh. Plus, for movies, it makes total sense because you always have controllable weather climates. Like, yeah, I can make all my movies real quick for 3 months anywhere out here. Like, for sure, I get all of this. But to get back to the St. Louis side of things, yes. I see where you're coming from. Like, yeah, so let me get back. That.
Yeah. So it was really just, I mean, the column almost had nothing. I mean, it had nothing to do with St. Louis, right?
It had everything to do with filling the stadium properly for that playoff game.
I mean, I could have just as easily, I suppose, just put St. Louis, right?
Sure, you could have.
But, I think as a writer, you're always kind of told, find different ways to say the same thing, right?
So I have a question then.
And honestly, that's just what popped into my mind.
Not to interrupt you, Dylan. Is it about the city? Because I feel like St. Louis is unique in one respect. We have 4 full seasons. Not like we're different than everybody around the Midwest. I'm just saying St. Louis is one of those cities that has 4 full seasons, right? You got the fall, the winter, the summer. Like, so you get a little bit of each thing. I don't know what it's like to wake up on Christmas morning on an 85-degree day. I've never seen that. Like, I've seen warm days on Christmas, but warm days can be 50 degrees. Like, that's tops. Like, most of my Christmas days are in the 30s or colder. So, like, I don't know what that's like. Or to even have a St. Patrick's Day that's 99 degrees. I have never seen that in my life. Like, I don't know. And we could have a warm summer or spring day. It's just one of those things. Like, I don't think it's the town. I think it's the people. Dylan, I think that the St. Louis, Missouri is called the show me state, right? This idea that there's a chip on my shoulder. Oh, you say that? Well, show me. Like, you prove it to me. Like, I'm this or no, I'm that. Like, there's always this chip. And I feel like that rubs off. Kind of like even with your story about the rollerblade girl, right? She had nothing to do with you guys. There was no reason or need to actually chase that guy down at the bar that night.
I'll defend her. Jeff deserved it.
Fine, Jeff deserved it. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't a necessary thing. It's like, for some reason, there is always this need to lash out or act out towards people from, if you're Midwesterner, especially if you're from Missouri. I'm not going to say St. Louis or Kansas, like Missouri, because we got people like this in Springfield, Missouri, and in the Boot Heel, towards Poplar Bluff. We have all kinds of people like this. And the state is called the Show Me State. It's like, obviously, hundreds of years ago when this state was formed, even then, the people of that time had this attitude. It was, they created this name back then. So it's like, I kind of see the people are like this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially with the sports. St. Louis, and I hate to say this, because as a kid who loves his town he grew up in, St. Louis can become fair weather fans very fast. Like, if your team ain't winning, and I feel like some of that is what happened with the Rams. I feel like they weren't winning Super Bowls because the Cardinals do really well at getting into the playoffs and getting into the World Series and having shots at it. The other teams, they expect the same level of credibility. They expect the same level of success. And when those teams make that success, like the 2019 Blues did, which was, you were a beat writer, you watched sports, you saw that, that was amazing. To go from like where they were all 6 months through that and win that championship, it was a streak. It was a streak. It wasn't the team. It was a streak that they caught hot on. And I'm not knocking them because they did win the title, so they deserve every bit of credit for winning their championship. But once they're not winning again, for some reason, St. Louisans fall off. And I think that's what happened with the Rams. You know, too many years where they fell off, and now before you know it, Stan Kroenke. What do you think about Stan Kroenke? Like, what's your mindset on him?
Okay, so, you know, in the larger picture sense, right?
Sure.
Stan Kroenke isn't the owner of the Rams. Nobody, right? Globally, nobody cares about the Rams. Stan Kroenke is the owner of Arsenal, right? One of the great brands in global soccer.
Sure.
And he, the
Reds,
before he took over, I mean, they were the Invincibles. They went undefeated in the Premier League, which has like a different economic structure than every other league in that they have revenue sharing there.
Oh, yeah.
So top to bottom, it's a very competitive league. And you see upsets all the time where a team at the bottom of the standings can upset somebody at the top, right? That doesn't happen.
I love relegation. I think we should have relegation in every sport. Yeah.
You know, Spain is a 2-team, maybe 3-team league. And everybody else has no chance basically when the season starts, right? Germany's the same way. And so, to go undefeated in the Premier League, it's quite an achievement. And basically, they have been turned into a team that's just scraping by to get into the Europa League, which is the NIT, so to speak, of European soccer. So you look at that, right? That's a cautionary tale. You obviously look at what he did in St. Louis, and you talk about the losing, right? People in St. Louis will argue that the Rams tanked to purposely drive away the fans to give themselves an excuse to get out.
Okay.
So yeah, you look
but
at
I don't think they did. I don't think they did. As a person who was a fan and watched them myself, I don't think that they purposely tanked. They played those games. Like, some of them they won, some of them they lost. I don't think that they worked any less hard because,
I don't think the players did, but in terms of roster construction,
the money's in the title. Like, you're always going to try to get the title because that's the money. That's where it comes in.
So, I think that there is this kind of, now I think, the weird thing here, right, is because I think I referred to Kroenke in this thing as like, the Walmart heiress marrying Arsenal destroying Stan Kroenke.
Literally, but
and Walmart, I'm not really sure how it is out in your part of the country, but Walmart doesn't come with a very positive connotation out here, right? It's kind of the worst of, our
Walmart's always looked at in the cheap place to go grab some stuff if you need it. type
Yeah,
vibe.
you
Like, I
know, but
don't think they've never looked at it as like a Von whatever that Von Maur.
yeah, well, it's kind of this like blood sucking corporation, right? They pay people so
Correct.
little
Correct.
to where they need to actually get on public assistance, and
Oh,
right,
for
it's just
sure.
ridiculously like
For sure.
lucrative. It's kind of, it
Mhm.
represents like the worst of like our economic system. So
That's true.
I by no means was complimentary to Kroenke in this thing, yet I think people in St. Louis,
They're
you know,
still
kind of were like,
butthurt. That's what
why
it really
aren't
comes
you?
down to. They're
Yeah,
butthurt.
well, why aren't you taking our side on this, right? And kind of, I think part of what I implied there was that, like, actually, you know, right, I referred to the Rams as being refugees from this dump in the Midwest, is kind of that, like, you for people out in LA, it's understandable that you might even break the law to relocate from St. Louis to LA. Like, of course you want to be in LA, you know, and not to say that this city's not without problems, but it's just, it's so many people, you know. There are,
There's a larger cast of people to pull from
right, you know,
financially,
and that's
for
the
sure.
thing, right? It's like the Chargers, you know, everybody made fun of the Chargers when they moved here, and you know, because they had no fans, and basically what we saw in Week 18 with the Rams this year was happening all the time with the Chargers. And they started out playing in a 30,000 seat soccer stadium, right, the first few years before they moved into this, and they are getting they're the visiting team like almost every single game here. Right now, the thing about this is that
you're talking about currently the Chargers feel like they're the visiting team in their home stadium.
This was like the first like 4 years, you know, when they were playing in the soccer stadium. Right?
Gotcha.
And so what happened though, but if you took a step back and looked at it, you know, 5,000 people were showing up to training camp, right? Whereas in San Diego, they were drawing from like 1,000. And so that's the thing, is that in San Diego, even if you get like everybody to buy in, you can only draw so much, right? It's better to be like team number 6 in LA than it is to be team number 1 in San Diego.
Gotcha.
And we've just kind of accepted that as like, sure, like everybody wants to be here. Now there are challenges coming here, right? This is not a market that's just going to automatically
I've never considered you guys a football market, to be honest. I'm not even trying to knock your city. I just feel like these larger cities like Chicago, LA, New York, they have multiple sports teams and multiple franchises. I feel like they're spread so thin in general. There's only a couple of sports that they can really gravitate to and really grab on. And then there's always going to be one team or two teams or a sport in general left kind of out. And for LA, I feel like it's football. I feel at one point the Rams were there. And then once that Rams team from that early 80s through the 80s left, in the 90s, you know what I'm saying? I feel like that was the last time truly football was even looked at as a thing in LA. Like, it's an LA thing.
Well, you know, I think the Raiders kind of had their moment in the 80s, but even then, I would argue that Los Angeles' football team has actually always been USC, right? And now,
true, you guys got college. Like, they support college.
And the thing is, I mean, we have 2 MLS teams here.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. I mean, you guys got so many things to spread, and it's like, can you spread that thin? Honestly, on a city?
No, you can't. And that's the thing, right? So it's basically Dodgers, Lakers, and probably the Mexican national soccer team, given what the makeup of the city is.
No, I understand that.
And with everybody else, it's kind of like, okay, well, you know what? You need to kind of earn the loyalty, you know? So
earn the loyalty. Like, I see what you're saying. That's what you say in your article.
Because honestly, when these teams came, it was kind of like the Rams came. It's like, you know, I mean, some people were even upset because we didn't have a local team. The games a wider range of games got shown on TV. We weren't locked into one team, you know? So people were actually complaining like, hey, I'm not going to be able to watch the Packers anymore on Sunday. I'm going to get stuck with the stupid Rams game. Some people were upset about that. Right. And the attitude in LA is really, okay, make me compete for my dollar, you know? And so the thing is like, sure, they're here. Okay, maybe we don't even want them, whatever. But like, you know what? There's no harm if they want to try to like win our attention, you know? And so it's kind of this the attitude is just kind of like completely different there, you know? And so, it's not, you know, a great sports town from like that standpoint. That said, if you do get to that point, say, where the Dodgers have gotten to, and keep in mind that this wasn't, you know, the Dodgers situation right now is different than it was even 10 years ago. Now they're a perennial World Series contender. When the entire city buys into something, you know, during USC during the Reggie Bush years, the Lakers during the Shaq and Kobe years, when you get this entire city behind you, now that becomes something very special. Kind of going back to Kroenke real quick, though.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Obviously, there are flags everywhere, right? There are red flags everywhere.
Sure.
Now, the Dodgers, when their new owners came into town, they're owned by Guggenheim Baseball Management, which is a subsidiary of the Guggenheim, right? It's an investment firm based out in Chicago, right? And so, they came in and they started spending money like crazy. Right now, you could again argue, okay, something about this doesn't look right. They're spending, right? They broke the baseball pay scale, basically, right? They took on something like $400 million in new contracts just to get Adrian Gonzalez, right? They took Carl Crawford, who was considered damaged goods. They took Josh Beckett, who was considered finished,
Definitely
because they wanted Adrian.
Beckett
right?
for sure.
They signed Andre Ethier to a big extension right away. They signed Yasiel Puig to like a $36 million
By the way, you brought up the Dodgers and their success now. And by the way, I feel like your whole town needs to go and tell Yasiel Puig, thank you. Because if it wasn't for him and those antics in those playoffs, like 2014, 2013 back then, like if it wasn't for him and all that, people wouldn't even paid attention to that Dodgers team. And that was because he kept literally putting it out there for them every single game. And then by the time they got to the point where they were getting to the World Series off that rebuild that you're talking about, it was like, we all forgot about Yasiel Puig. And it was like, you shouldn't. Because if it wasn't for him keeping the name floating in the ether, maybe this rebuild doesn't even happen the way it happens. That name out there helped.
But the point I wanted to make here was just that, so early on when they're coming in, spending a ton of money, I think you can only kind of judge people based on what they do, right? So even though you might be kind of suspicious of them, early on they were spending a ton of money, and we were, right, our coverage was very favorable at the time, right?
Yes,
now, what ended up happening, what we ended up seeing happen was the fact that, their TV deal was up. And so basically what they wanted to do was stack their team with stars so they can get a really expensive TV contract, which they did. They signed a $6 billion TV deal with Time Warner. The problem was that the cable distributors didn't want to pay, the $4 per subscriber that the Dodgers were asking for, which resulted in, for 7 years, people in LA couldn't watch the Dodgers.
Oh, yeah.
So when that happened, now we did turn on them, right? And we were writing about this constantly.
And it's funny you say that, because right now in St. Louis, because of the way that they structured the deal for the Blues, there are games that people have to go to ESPN Plus to watch. There could be sold out home games that normally, remember the old days. You remember the old days because you're probably a little, I'm 46. I don't know how old you are, but there was a time when blackouts were very common in sports, and if they sold out a venue, then they would open it up to the local TV market and allow them on one of their local stations to watch it because there was no more seats available. We don't have that anymore. Now it's everybody niche picking like you're talking about, where they'll take your games away from you and go, oh, you got to get ESPN Plus or else too bad, we don't care.
Yeah, and it was terrible here because, Vince Scully was getting close to retiring, and they almost kind of they try to use that to hold people hostage and hey, you better sign up, switch cable providers, whatever. And my point is, again, when we turned on them then, right? Now with Kroenke so far, and I get that the people of St. Louis want us to kind of pick up their fight, but the truth is we kind of don't. I'm sorry, they might have screwed you guys over, but we kind of don't care. Right. And
I don't see that there's a problem with that because, like you said, it's not your fault. That's between Stan Kroenke and us.
And since the Rams have been here, right, they have been, I think, at least,
fantastic,
very proactive, solid. And kind of win over. They've been good owners, I think. Right. So far, they've been managed well.
5 years.
When they got to LA,
you got almost two Super Bowls, right? You got to one. You're almost getting ready to get to two. So the team itself is solid.
Right.
They've gone out of their way to try to endear themselves to the home fan base again, which is what you're talking about.
Right. They went out when they moved to LA. First thing they did was they traded for the number 1 overall pick.
Right.
You can question, the whole thing. Was it worth it in the end? Because it was Jared Goff, whatever. But you know what? He gave them a face when they needed a face in a city where faces are everything. Stars are everything. Yasiel Puig, like you said, drove the Dodgers for a long time. Before that, Manny Ramirez drove the Dodgers. This is a star.
Both of them tag teamed. Oh yeah.
It's a star-driven town. the way they've constructed their team since, right? It's they went out, they got Jalen Ramsey, they've gotten Odell Beckham, they got Matt Stafford. I mean, this is not and frankly,
and we've watched Cooper Kupp come into his own. Honestly, to me, Cooper Kupp right now is the MVP of the league, because an MVP makes good decisions not only on the field but off the field. And the truth is that after I watched Derrick Henry get swiped last year with Offensive Player of the Year but not the MVP award when he had a historic season, Aaron, we gave you your MVP last year. This year, I'm not giving Aaron Rodgers the MVP. I'm giving it to Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I think that's a great. Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm doing that. Like, me personally, that's who I think is the MVP.
Right. So they've built this new stadium. When there have been, unfortunately, tragedies in the area, whether they've been fires or there was a shooting kind of nearby, where the Rams practice facility is, like they've jumped into these things. Jared Goff was actually a big part of those things. So far they've done all the right things, and that's all we can really judge. I feel
I was
that
asked
we can judge them on.
I was asked to ask you a question, and I think that this is the time to do it, simply because we're kind of talking about the area, the place, like Los Angeles and their connection to the physical team. And one of the questions I was asked to ask you was, obviously, with the dump of a Midwest City comment that you made, there's connotations in the minds of the people here about, so I think he thinks our city's trashy, or like it's a trailer park, or it's like worthless, or this or that. And they were like, what about all the homeless issues that the state of California is having, in not only San Francisco, but they also have stuff in LA and tent cities? Is there a tent city close to where the stadium is, or in that area? Like, do you have that presence around the stadium, or is it a problem for the stadium or the team? Or the teams in the area?
Well, according to the reports, not anymore, because they've kind of this is like a classic LA thing where, right before the 1984 Olympics, if you go down South Central Los Angeles on the 110 freeway, they have these walls up that got put up around that time so that you couldn't see that area of town.
I see.
Similarly, right, there've been a lot of reports about actually they've been cleaning up the homeless encampments between LAX and the stadium in Inglewood, so that when people come from the outside, they won't see it. Look, here's the thing. LA is also a dump. It's a different type of dump, but it's also kind of...
At least that's a fair assessment, too.
Hey, here's the thing, man. We live in the United States. Like, I don't know, if you've been to Sydney, Australia, Tokyo, Japan,
sure,
other
major cities, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know what? Like, we actually don't do this very well. Like, when I was in Sydney, I felt like, oh my God, I feel so poor. My currency is...
When I leave St. Louis and go to other cities, I go and, wow, this is a lot different. And sometimes I go, what, a lot better. Like, the first time I ever went to Nashville, I was like, oh, it's like St. Louisans, except for they actually mean it when they say thank you. And they say sir or ma'am, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was the vibe I got. Now, that's not to knock St. Louisans. St. Louisans are strong. They're proud people. They do love their sports teams, which I think is a good thing, right? There's always that argument about the best fans in baseball or football or basketball or this or that. I think St. Louis has great fans, like, as far as fandom goes. Like, they support, when they're supporting, they love you. And the Cardinals can do no wrong here. That's like the Cubs. Like, you could lose every single season and that stadium will be filled every single time. Probably similar thing for the Lakers in Los Angeles. It doesn't matter if they're having a losing season and they only got one star. The stands will be filled every single time. I think every city has that to an extent. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think, like, there's, everything kind of has its own. And again, like, if anybody had bothered to kind of go into the archives,
sure,
I get on LA fans for leaving games early and hitting beach balls.
And that's why I say it's more about the people. It's more about the people. It always is about the people. It's about the way that I said earlier in this interview, I said St. Louis kind of comes off fair weather when their teams aren't doing well. Like, it's always about the people. And I find that to be the most interesting aspect. Almost, it's great that guys like me and you do what we do. Because for us, it's observation. We step back from the fire and we observe the entire everything. And then we go, okay, this looks right, that looks wrong, call this what it is, that's not there. You know, like we start switching pieces around, and then people see that and they go, whoa, 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 stop, you can't do that. That's not fair to us. And it's like, whoa, maybe you're not being willing to look in the mirror and realize that sometimes you come off like that to other people. Sometimes these things do feel like this to other people. Like your brother was going to school here, you would show up. There's places that you thought were nice and cool, but like there's no one downtown at night. So because everybody drives in from 20 minutes outside of the city to support the baseball, the basketball, the football, everything. You know what I'm saying? So you're not even seeing a vibrant city when you're here. You're just seeing the remnants after 6 p.m. of what's left over of the people that got in their cars and drove back to their houses 15 to 20 minutes away outside of the city.
Yeah, you know, and everything's got like its own charm, right? Even something that might be kind of like negative, so to speak.
Sure.
You know, the fact that, you know, the one thing, so again, when I went to go see my brother one time.
You're in a city that never sleeps. We're in a city that always sleeps.
We took the train to Busch Stadium.
Yeah.
You know, and watched the game.
Oh, that was dangerous. The Metrolink? Oh.
You know, and people, the fact that they were engaged in every ball and strike, they were oohing and eyeing, right? Yeah. Which is kind of cool. Now, I think the whole like best fans in baseball thing, that feels a little bit like,
you know? Hey, let's be honest. Like I said, like the Cubs, if they went on 100-year like dry spell right now, that fandom and those stands would still be filled 100 years from now.
Well, I'm not
for
arguing.
The same team, and they will have 89 seasons of losses in a row, and it would still be filled. I will give them that credit because I am a huge Cardinals fan. I am a huge Cardinals fan.
Look, I will too, but I think what I was getting at more was kind of this like.
I would say St. Louis has the best fan. I will say no. I'll defend St. Louis. No. Yeah, I'm going to come down on you. Listen, You show me Clayton Kershaw. You show me Dodgers. Show me the show me state. You show me how good you are because I got like 42 World Series wins. And we're willing to put that on the line. And by the way, I was pissed at the Subway Series in 99, 2000 because that Cardinals team should have been in that and it would have been Yankees-Cardinals that year for that championship. So, yeah, that didn't even make me happy. So, yeah. But by the way, I'm a Flyers fan. Pissed off at the Blackhawks in 2010 for sweeping us. So, yeah, there's a lot of, like, you know, fandom in there. So, we are the best space. And we will be sanctimonious about that.
Yeah, that's the thing, Dylan, right? The whole Cardinals way thing, whatever. It's like, come on, get out of here. Right now, like,
listen,
LA,
it's the Boston way in Boston. It's the New York way in New York. Everybody's got their say.
They're good, you know. And the thing is, though, is like, right, with every town, like, you like certain flaws of it, right? You know, the fact that like Dodger Stadium, that nobody's paying attention really, is kind of like a nice thing because it becomes a place you can go to hang out. When my dad, you know, he just turned 60 this year, and 70, sorry. And, you know, my brother and I took him out to a game at Dodger Stadium, and we just kind of sat there and talked and kind of watched, and not really, but.
Where do we stand on the Dodger dog?
It was just a nice time. Oh, the Dodger dog is terrible. It's the single most overrated food thing in the world. Yeah, and if you tell that to a Dodger fan, they'll actually want to fight you, which is stupid.
That's the other thing. Like this is the other thing. Like we have the famous Los Angeles Raiders, the Raiders fan base that will literally jump you in the parking lot 50 deep, and it will become a viral sensation like within 13 seconds. Yeah. And this is like the Raiders are known for this. And then they even brought it to LA, and LA was like, "Oh yeah, we rock that way too." Yeah. Where that
you know, it's funny because you know, so I grew up going, you know, when I was in elementary school, pretty much the only thing I went to were soccer games, and in LA, the two big Hispanic groups here are obviously the Mexicans and the Salvadorians. So they would always bring in a Mexican team and a Salvadorian team. The crowd would like naturally self-segregate, you know. You pay your $10, whatever, sit on your side of the stadium.
Everybody divides. Yep.
Now, if anybody walked onto the wrong side, they would probably get beat up. So, like, there would be fights at all these games, and that's what, like, I grew up seeing.
Watching,
That was normal.
But that's normal. Exactly. See, once again, soccer around the world, these type of things are normal. Like, they get into battles with each other outside of the arenas.
However, I went to a Raiders game for the first time, and I remember we went because it was Joe Montana's like last game, right? He was playing for the Chiefs.
Sure.
It was the Raiders' last game in LA, and I remember there was a couple wearing in Chiefs jerseys, and dude, somebody punched that woman in the face, man, and I'm like, oh, oh my God, this is like a whole different, because the soccer
That
stuff,
is
at least
not
it
a
was man
glowing
on
review.
man, like that was like, oh my God, like this is,
Wow.
and yeah, like okay, look, that's not good. And when they were talking about teams coming back here, relocation, there was this, I mean, there's a reason the Raiders didn't come back here. I don't think the NFL wanted them here. Right. They did not want to kind of tap back into that.
I think that they're realizing the same thing we talked about earlier in this interview. The fact that LA might not be much of a football city. Like right now, are the Rams more popular or the Chargers more popular to LA, in your opinion?
The Rams are, for sure.
The Rams are more popular. Okay,
Yeah.
so I would feel if I was an LA Chargers fan, just because it's an LA team that might have a shot at the Super Bowl, I would just come out deep anyway. Even if I was wearing my Chargers gear because it just happens to be blue and yellow also. I'd just come out deep for that. But you said, for so many, well, that's kind of like St. Louis. The minute the Rams left, a lot of people just reverted right back to their Kansas City Chiefs fandom. Because it wasn't like we lost it all that much. We remember Christian Okoye, the Nigerian Nightmare, all that stuff, like those years, the Joe Montana years and all that. Then the Rams came. Then they were here. They won a Super Bowl. Kurt Warner was great. We loved it, which, by the way, to this day, I will go on any live microphone and an interview like this with a sports writer for the LA Times, like one of the largest newspapers in the world, and I will literally look them in the face and say, I bet I will put that that St. Louis Rams 99-2000 team up against any Super Bowl team ever, and I bet you they put it to them. For real. Those dudes were too fast and those throws were too far. Like, that's how good that team really was. They were murking people that whole season, winning by like 15, 20 points at a time. Like, it was ridiculous. It was like watching a 4x100 relay team just getting tossed to by like Tom Brady, except for it was Kurt Warner. Like, seriously, it was craziness. That's how good that Rams team is. And I feel like they could probably get back there. And if they had that support of that fan base, but if the 49ers come in deep, and you were talking about buying the different area codes and they were trying to shut that down, but I feel like they can't do that.
No.
Like, there's no way to legally do that because you're like, well, if we're trying to make money, we're going to sell to whoever wants to buy.
Yeah, and the tickets are now all on the secondary market, right? And the Niners fans are all buying them up. And the thing is, there are a lot of Niners fans. These aren't just Niners fans coming down from the Bay Area. They are here, right? Because when the team left, a lot of people adopted the Niners as their team. And another like important distinction here actually is that, when the Rams left, they were playing in Anaheim, right? Yeah. Which is
it's not LA. It's not LA. That's the OC.
It's not LA.
It's not LA. No.
Here's the thing, right? Is that
but it is LA. Raiders, to us, it's LA. It's all LA. Like that's what I was saying earlier. It's all
the Raiders were the more popular team, right? And so it's the Rams were to the Raiders what the Angels are to the Dodgers, what the Clippers are to the Lakers.
Yeah.
And so when the team came back, right, it would be like if the Lakers and the Clippers
illegitimate stepchild. Yeah, the illegitimate stepchild. Got it.
If the Lakers and the Clippers both left and the Clippers came back, and now their fans are upset because they're sitting here like, well, we're the team now. Why aren't we the Lakers? And it's like, well, you're still the Clippers, right?
Right.
Because there's still like a lot of diehard like Raider fans. So, it's not like really like, again, that the team, that this like, that this team that was, they left for a reason.
Sure. Yeah.
They weren't trying in Anaheim. They left for a reason.
Is there a team that left that you're like, I'm glad they left? I'm glad they're going. Honestly, yourself, because you've had a lot of teams come to LA and then leave in different sports. So like,
probably the Raiders,
really,
again, because you look at like they played in the Coliseum, right?
Sure.
Assuming they would still be there right now.
But that's USC's home ground. Like nobody's touching USC's home ground. So
yeah, they've renovated it. Like that area has become a little bit nicer in that right next to the Coliseum, they built the brand new soccer stadium for LA's second MLS team, right? LAFC plays in this beautiful kind of state-of-the-art soccer-specific stadium that's like right next to that. It has a really nice food hall. That area has a little bit like started to gentrify a little bit. It's getting a little bit nicer. And again, I think if that area was still associated with the Raiders, I do kind of wonder, would developers come in with the same amount of zeal to, redevelop the area. Maybe not. I mean, again, I described what those games were like, right? It had like a certain energy to it. Honestly, like, I've covered games in Vegas. Those games there is still a bit of an edge there. You know, probably for the better, right? That pot is like legal in Vegas because like
Sure.
everybody's like all high and at least kind of.
Which is funny since so
we are too.
Are you recreational? Are you full recreational in LA and California?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
See, we're not here, but that's because of the regressive aspect. We don't want to talk politics here. We're talking sports. But my point being, like, there's a regressive attitude in the Midwest, especially in red states, as you well know. You've heard about them. And, I don't know why, but there's always these small stepping stones. And like you said, if you open certain aspects up, I think it enhances other aspects of sports and travel and tourism, and all these different things can be affected by these things simply as recreationalizing weed or
especially like people with like violent energy. I'd rather have them high, right?
Yeah, for sure.
This isn't alcohol.
Like bring you down a level, exactly.
Fight, this is kind of So, but I just I covered again the first game they played in Vegas with in the empty stadium, and I covered the first one with fans, and I wrote about how don't bring your kids here, right? Because it has that kind of energy. I wrote about how when you would see a kid, it's like, I don't know if you guys have this at all, but like we do this, every now and then you'll see this where, right, the 6-year-old kid at the supermarket with his parents.
Okay.
And you could just kind of tell again, like that. Probably like not the most dependable people, so to speak, right? If they're
I see what you're saying. Like the kid's hanging off the side of the cart, half of it, half out. It's like he's gonna fall over and kick all the grape jelly over. Like you guys could try to get on top of him.
Yeah, you're wondering, right? What's this kid doing at this game here? It has that kind of energy to it. So yeah, we could probably do without that.
That's fair. Okay, so to kind of start to wrap this up and do a little ball, because we've been talking for a while here. First off, St. Louis, I'm not going to say that I disagree that it could be considered a dump. I feel like the people their attitude at times can be more of the issue as opposed to the city itself being a dump. But you also admitted earlier in this interview that LA has its own ways of being a dump, and that you've talked about many of those aspects too. So that's very fair. Would you be willing to apologize to the city of St. Louis for calling this Midwestern city a dump? Would you be willing?
No.
Okay. That's fair. That's your right. You have every right to stand on that for it. Now, I will move forward past that question right there, which is fair. No. I feel like these are the questions. There's a lot of people out. I told you I was a pariah. There's a lot of people out there that won't ask you these questions. They won't put you on the point to like do these things because they're afraid that's going to make them look bad. My reputation's already completely destroyed. Nobody gives up. What?
Can I ask you something?
Sure. What's up?
Why do they care?
Why do they care about the comment?
Yeah, like it's.
Once again, it's that arrogance. It's the people's arrogance. It's that chip on the shoulder. And I think most of it really has to do with St. Louis has been jilted twice now by two different owners with a professional football team. One that was literally named after the sports franchise that was sister of, which was the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team. They took off in the middle of the night. Like literally at 3 o'clock in the morning, they loaded trucks up and tore off to Arizona with Bill Bidwell, if I remember correctly. And dude, it was like being left at the altar. Like it was just like literally jilted. It was like we didn't even know we were losing the football team. He just took off. And they were in Arizona, and then they didn't even have their own stadium yet. They were going to build one, and eventually it was going to be something. It was like, holy crap. Now, what made things okay was when Kurt won the Super Bowl with the Rams when they came here. And then he went to the Arizona Cardinals. People were like, that's cool. He went to our old team. He won one with our new team. We'll give them a pass, and we'll just allow this to just rest, right? But then Kroenke started playing his games, and before you know it, once again, a team that the city did take under their wing. They did hold dear to themselves. I was a fan of the Rams, but I was also a fan of the Chiefs too. I always kept like an arm's length on these things, honestly, because I just understand this. But the city got jilted again by Stan Kroenke, which is why they had this entire lawsuit and all this other stuff that just went down. And it's like, I think the city of St. Louis is sick of being looked at as not a sports town that people should be at. When the truth is I think the Cardinals and the Blues do prove that this can be a great sports town. But I also think that we have to like tether that with our expectations that you and me talked about earlier, which is the idea that not every town can support so many teams, right? LA has got like 10, 15 million people. So trying to support an MLS team, an MLB team, an NBA team, an NHL hockey team, a this, a that, like all these things is possible when you have that many people to pull from. St. Louis only has 3 million people to pull from, or a little over 300 million.
I don't even get this idea though, like of having pride of like, you talk about the good sports fan, so to speak. To me, a lot of times that means sucker. You need to make these owners hold these teams accountable and make sure they the Cardinals.
I don't think that there's sports. I don't think there's sports announcers that disagree with you, though. I don't think that there's many that disagree with you. I think right there, that statement you just said, I think myself and a lot of people that talk sports in this town agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good, dude.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'll just because. Well, like if you like your city, like isn't that like if somebody were to call LA a dump person, I'd just be like, yeah.
And that's the thing. I think that you caught a lot of that St. Louis, like I told you earlier, you caught a lot of that St. Louis hate for no reason whatsoever. And I think a lot of tone and inflection gets lost with conversations and things that you're saying. Now, like I said, you said a direct statement. That's why I asked you directly, is this something you would be willing to apologize for? Because there's not really a lot of mincing words on that one. At the same point, I don't think that you should have the right to have your opinion and stated the way you did and to be respected for that. Like you said, go into the archives, look and see what I've done, and then come back and chastise me. One of my arguments about St. Louis is there's a lot of people that'll claim that they've worked with me that never worked with me. And they'll tell people, hey, this person, blah, blah, blah. And I go back and look at the record, then come back to me and let's talk. Because I think things get taken out of context very easily. And when you look at one article from one guy, it's almost like Twitter. You look at one article from one guy, and then you try to base who he is and that whole town is off that one article. It's not a good look. It's just not a good look. I think that you said if you've got other things that make, technically, LA a dump, you've written about those things too. You've chastised those things yourself personally, and people need to do their research, their due diligence, before they just shoot off. And I think that's what happened here. You got caught with one comment, one time, and they shot off on you.
Well,
I don't think that it's fair to you. I don't think it's fair to you, but at the same point, it's what happened. But I know what we can do. I know what we can do to make these things better. Like a Johnny Knoxville who keeps bringing Jackass back. I know what we can do to make things better. Now, you like baseball. You said you were a beat writer for LA for the Dodgers for a long time. Who's your favorite Cardinals player you've ever seen? I'm sure that you've seen players from other teams that you're like, wow, I really like that guy. I wish we had him on our team.
So you're baiting me into a question that I got a smart ass answer for you.
You can have a smart ass answer. I don't mind.
Future Dodger Nolan Arenado.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, you like Nolan Arenado?
I think Arenado should opt out.
Okay, that's fine. Now another question. Because we are such a big baseball city, right? We have a lot of opinions about baseball, and right now, one of the biggest things everybody's talking about in baseball is should Pete Rose get that nod for the Hall of Fame? Like, is it time for us to, settle down the attitude against Pete Rose and go, okay. Now, my argument for Pete Rose has always been the law was in the books already. He knew it was a law that was in the books, in the bylaws, and he broke that rule. If their decision was banned from baseball Hall of Fame for life because of a rule break that was in the book at the time, fine, so be it. On the other side of that, we've got the Sammy Sosas. We got the Mark McGuires, the Barry Bonds. We've got the Juice guys. We've got the HGH guys. And at the time that Mark McGuire and Sosa and them were doing the HGH, it wasn't a law in the books. It wasn't a part of the rules. And by the way, Barry Bonds himself probably was already set for the Hall of Fame before the year 2000 even hit. Honestly, at that point. So was McGwire. They had already won their World Series championships as the Bash Brothers and stuff. They had already done all their work. Those guys were probably going to be in the Hall of Fame by 1999 anyway. So why hold them back at this point? Where do you stand on all of that?
Well, with Rose, the problem that we're getting now is, right, the legalized gambling stuff, right?
Yeah.
And not only is it getting legalized, but baseball is actually going out of their way to like court this stuff and bring it into their stadiums. You're soon going to be able to bet in most stadiums, I believe, in the next 10 years, right? So that's creating a bit of a problem. I agree with you. The law was in the books. You go back to the Black Sox scandal. I mean, it almost destroyed the game, right? That rule is in the books for a reason, right? And I do think that professional sports better watch out, because the bedrock of it is competition, and if something,
if they play this game that they're playing, like you just said, where they're slowly starting to bring the sports books into this game, eventually you're going to run into the same problems, like you said, the Black Sox had, and you're going to have people that are going to get to people because of their networks and who they know. And there's going to potentially be a referee that gets pulled or turned, or a coach that gets pulled or turned. We've already seen it in college sports. So, like, it's not unheard of that it could happen. Hey, listen, SMU got the death penalty. Like, we'll all remember that. So it's just one of these things. Like, I get it. I'm with you on that.
So, with Rose, I say let's wait a little bit to see how this gambling thing plays out, and exactly, because I feel
like he gets in, but it's going to be posthumously. I think they just give him a nod after the fact.
Now with the roid guys, to me, I think you either let them all in or you don't let any of them.
I say we let them all in, because there's nothing to that whole error was everybody doing it against each other.
Yeah.
Hey, what the worst part, Dylan, is we all, as Americans, not just as cities with baseball teams, as Americans, this whole country tore into Jose Canseco and destroyed this man verbally over his book. And literally 4 years later, they sat on a stand in front of Congress and said, yeah, everything that dude said in the book, yeah, we did that. Yeah, that was all real. It was all real.
Now the thing is,
lie at all. Like,
so the thing is, I covered the Dodgers when Manny Ramirez was there, right?
Okay.
And when he got popped,
right?
And I saw the impact that had in the clubhouse, right? Matt Kemp, Andre Ethier were kind of these like up and coming stars, and they were following Manny around everywhere. And when he got hit with that steroid thing, it was like the entire team had the rug pulled out from under them. And it's hard for me to put that guy in the Hall of Fame. Now, so then it kind of becomes a thing of like, well, if I say, I don't know, Bonds or Sosa or whoever, right? You put in another one of these guys, or even some of the guys that have gotten in already that might or might not have done whatever. Is the difference now then between a Hall of Famer and a non-Hall of Famer the ability to avoid detection, right? To me, that shouldn't be what separates one from the other.
That's a good point.
So right now, I tend to be kind of in the, like, honestly, like if I were like the LA Times does not allow its writers to vote on awards, right? We are deterred, right? We think we should be covering news rather than making it. So we don't vote. If I had a vote, honestly, I would probably be a blank ballot guy right now, because I also think that you can put people in later. You can't take them out, right? So now I am kind of kicking the can down the road here a little bit, I think, and if you look at, again, not to get too political, but if you look at drugs as a whole, right, what usually separates something that's legal from illegal, it depends on who owns the means of production, right? I'm convinced that if cocaine were made in South Carolina and tobacco were grown in South America, tobacco would be illegal and cocaine
would be legal,
right.
Yeah.
So my guess is that at some point, some pharmaceutical company is going to come up with some designer steroid, they'll
it's
call
undetectable at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they'll call it something else, and they'll even legalize it. Right.
Sure.
These pharmaceutical companies are the ones that can, right. They, conduct these FDA trials, and they'll claim it's safe, whatever. And soon everybody will be doing it. And then, then in that case, then all this becomes okay. Right. Because our morality, right, our sense of what's right and wrong will have changed. As of right now, I think I'm kind of in the camp of like, well, don't let any of them in. Now, I'll admit that where my thinking, I think, kind of runs into a bit of a problem is, and I'm still kind of trying to think through this is, say when somebody, right, Clayton Kershaw comes up for eligible, right, when he's eligible to be voted in. I think it's kind of dumb to just assume that that a guy did or didn't do something. The truth is we just don't know.
Right.
But again, I covered this guy's whole career. I kind of feel like I know like his sense of like, right. Even talking to him about how he dealt with the Astros sign stealing scandal. Just talking, right. We had a lot of conversations about these things. And in doing that, like, I don't know. I just, my gut tells me he didn't do anything. Again, I don't know.
Sure. That's fine. I mean, like,
I would
listen,
be,
there's some people you just get that feeling off of. You're
Yeah.
like, listen, this is just an honest person.
I would be inclined. My point is, I would be inclined to vote for him, right?
Yeah.
So, if I'm letting one guy in, again, this kind of goes back to the all or nothing, right? So
Now, are you a voter? Are you a voter for anything?
We can't vote. The Times doesn't let us.
Oh, that's
vote.
right. That's right. I'm sorry.
So, I think that's where kind of my thinking gets a little bit, where it's a little problematic. Is that okay? I think that guy's a Hall of Famer. All these guys I kind of don't know right now, maybe because of the, but like even their guys right now, like honestly, like in the back of your head, you're kind of wondering like, well, how did that just happen? I think we'd be really naive to think that this stuff is gone from the game, right? We talk about the steroid era, that this is some kind of post-steroid era. I just think, I mean, if you look at like the biogenesis scandal, right? The one that A-Rod got wrapped up in, the one with the lab in Florida.
Yep.
None of those guys tested positive. This
came out after the fact, exactly.
Right. The only reason this happened is because like the idiot that was giving them the drugs wouldn't pay some guy like $500, and that guy got mad and like ratted him out, basically.
Exactly.
Right. A lot of these guys, the whole Falco scandal, those guys didn't test positive. Marion Jones didn't test positive. Bonds didn't test positive. So
that's where my argument has always been: if we're gonna, you might as just let them in, right? They never tested positive. They never tested positive. And if they, and now that we all know in hindsight, 2020, right? Hindsight's 2020, right? They were all doing the juice. All of them. There wasn't one or a couple. Like, not every player at the time was doing juice, but what I'm saying is, like, any big name that was putting up numbers at that time was doing juice, and it wasn't illegal. It wasn't in the bylaws. It wasn't a Pete Rose type thing.
It was against federal law.
It was, but it was like, here's the thing. This is once again, where do we set the rules for them to guide themselves versus the country and the federal laws to guide what is legal or not legal, or like, because here's the thing. As a guy who worked in professional wrestling, right? I always found it funny that everybody came after the steroid guys, the juicers in the 1980s and the early 1990s. The reason why? One, it's performance art technically. Two, why wouldn't you want big men who can throw each other, have sizable muscles? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I understand this whole idea of natural this and natural that for you personally. But if I'm putting on a show, right? It's like, I can either wait till Brad Pitt turns 84 or I can make Brad Pitt look 84. Well, today I need to make him look 84 because he's 30. So it doesn't matter what like your thoughts are on illegal versus not illegal. This, I want this vibe for this thing. Pro football players, they're all massive men already. They're all trying to play at the absolute best at their spot and their position. There's no league to try to get to above their league. So at that point I go, well, let them just do their thing. Like, that's on them. If he's got bigger muscles, the other guy's going to want to have bigger muscles. And if that guy doesn't want to juice, he won't juice. And somebody else will come along that's like, yeah, I'll go up against that dude. Give me the needle, I'll juice. I'm not sitting here advocating we need steroids and everything by any means whatsoever. What I'm saying is I don't see why there's a problem sometimes in certain sports with this idea of wanting to be bigger, badder, and more muscular so that you can be more athletic and perform at a higher level. Especially when this is the highest level for all of these guys in most of these sports.
I think maybe again, because trying to stop drugs like of any kind, right? Recreational, performance enhancing,
sure, it's
honestly like impossible. And maybe, I have thought that maybe the solution here is, in Italy, I think this was like in the 90s, there was a team-wide doping program that one of these teams had.
Okay.
And basically they had a doctor that oversaw the program. And maybe that's kind of right because, in theory, we're concerned about like the safety of this stuff. And maybe that's kind of how you do it, right? Where you have a medical professional that kind of like oversees this stuff and can kind of
Yeah, I
dispensed it,
mean, we could have
responsibly.
somebody who's responsible to be over the top for each of these teams with these individuals. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because what we have seen, right, is that one of the consequences of having drugs be illegal, right? Right now we're seeing it with the recreational drugs, is that there's no like quality control, right? So like fentanyl's getting into powdered stuff, and now people are dying, right? Skaggs, the Angels pitcher.
And by the way, no, me or Dylan is not advocating heroin or fentanyl use or anything like that. We are not. We're just saying that it is out there already within the world.
Yeah, because it's not legal, there can't be any quality control, right? If Coca-Cola was putting crap into their drinks and people were dying, there's a corporation to sue that's hold liable. And
the
so
FDA
Coca-Cola
comes along and says, you can't do that, bro.
They make sure that there's and so again, I'm not necessarily saying that, we should legalize heroin because of that, because I think there would be other problems that would come up. But like, again, in regards to performance enhancing drugs, if we're concerned about the safety, well, maybe the solution is to have like a medical somebody that knows what they're doing and actually supervise it, and not some guy in a strip mall in Miami like A-Rod was going to.
Fair enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, listen, I have now spent an hour with Dylan Hernandez from the Los Angeles Times. And Dylan, first off, thank you so much for coming on the show. I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me about our dump of a city. We did not get an apology from Dylan, but that's okay. We said that was fair. He's allowed to hold his position because I respect that man. And hey, listen, I think it's great that you decided to jump in on here and talk to us, because I think we did add a little bit of tone and inflection and a little bit of background and a little bit of understanding to where you are as a writer and what your mindset is, especially as a sports writer. So that's important, because I think that got lost on a lot of people. And I'm sure people are going to take things that I said in this conversation and go, see that Mark Bland guy? He says dumb shit. And I'm going to go, you guys have been saying this for 2 decades now, okay? I'm not really worried about saying dumb shit. So it's just part of who I have to be in this world. So like yourself, Dylan, I'm also a pariah. So don't take it personally. We're in the same boat, technically.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a really good time chatting, man. And,
hey, listen. I'm not gonna let you off the hook. We're gonna have you back on the queue again. We're gonna.
Oh, please. No,
as we move forward with our show and some things that might be coming up here in the future, the very near future, I got your. I'm gonna keep in contact with you, and we're gonna have you on the show again to talk some more sports, especially if the Rams get into the Super Bowl. We definitely got to talk at that point, because it's going to be like, okay, well, here we are. Stan Kroenke stole him away just a few years ago to put him into Super Bowl again. Jesus, how much more stepping on can the city of St. Louis take? But I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. And if you guys get a chance, go check out Dylan Hernandez, Los Angeles Times writer. He's got a lot of great articles out there. Read them first before you chastise him and attack him for these things. I will give him that much credit.
Thank you so much for having me on. And look, if you're ever out in my dump, please let me know. We can go out, and if I'm out in your dump, I'll give you
I'll bring a roller derby girl with me just to make sure that we're safe at all times. Okay.
Oh, I can't wait to tell Jeff that I told the story.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, tell Jeff, let him watch this, because I'm going to put it up. You let him watch this, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much too.